Բարի երեկո սիրելի բարեկամներ, անգամ եւս կողջուն եմ ձեզ AMGA հեռուստաընկերության հիմնական հաղորդաշարով։ Այսօր ես ունիմ շատ հետաքրքիր մի անձնավորություն, դաղավարներ, որոնք պետք է ես ձեզ ներկայացնեմ։ Նախքան այդ ասեմ, որ որովհետեւ իմ հյուրս անգլիախոս է, մենք պիտի ունենանք երկխոսություն։ Իր անունը Մարկ Մոյզեր է եւ ինքը կպատրաստվի մասնակցելու հարաճիկա ընտրություններուն, որոնք պիտի լան եկող տարի հունիսի 7-ին։ Շատ բարի, մենք հիմա կանտրատարնանք ադոր։ Good evening, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful.
I am really thankful that you took some time and came to be our guest in our show. What we usually do is we prepare our viewers for upcoming elections, and of course we introduce them, and I'm going to do in both languages. I'm going to ask you a question and then I will try to summarize it and present it to them. Okay, how about that?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so let me just I have a little bit of your biography. I'm going to go ahead and summarize it in Armenian and then come back. Ուրեմն բարոն Մարկ Մոյզերը, բարոն Ֆիլիպ Մարկ Մոյզերը, ուրեմն ինքը ծնած է 1974 թվականին եւ օգոստոսի 30-ին Huntington Beach-ի մեջ։ Ուրեմն ինքը արդեն իձնե Կալիֆոռնիա բնակ է եւ այժմ արդեն գբնագի Պասադինայի մեջ։ Իր նախնական գրթութենն յետք նաև իր ուսումը ստացած է որպես փաստաբան եւ նաև հիմա այդպիսի փաստաբան իսկ ունի շատ Եդասատութենը իվեր ինքը արդեն պոլիտիկով կսպաղի, քաղաքականությամբ կսպաղի, բայց ամենակարևորը երկու հատկանշական կետերն էին, առաջվն ինքը արդեն campaign manager-ներ եղած է տարբեր դեղեր, բայց ամենակարևորը այն էր, որ մասնակցած էր ընտրության Կալիֆոռնիայի որպես ամբողջ Կալիֆոռնիա նահանգի որպես սենատոր եւ նաեւ 2018-ին ինքը որպես Կալիֆոռնիա նահանգի ինքը սեկրետարի, այսինքն շատ կարևոր գործերն են որ կան։ Այժմ ինքը նաեւ Dylan Loeb Group-ի անդամ է 2017-ին իվեր եւ գսիրե Քայլել գսիրե հեծանիվ գսիրե scuba diving եւ գսիրե նաեւ ձույնի վրա սաղել թահուկով. So this was your I presented to you in Armenian. So again, thank you. I know you're very busy and thank you very much. So you did not sometimes when we ask people to come in there and I like the way you accepted it. Thank you for that. So let's start.
Let's start.
You are a very successful attorney. Why leave this comfortable life and go and put yourself in politics?
The answer to that is very simple, yet very complex.
Okay.
I am a successful constitutional attorney where I fight daily for people's constitutional rights. And fighting for people's constitutional rights, over the last year, we have seen government officials intentionally do stuff that they know is unconstitutional. President Biden has basically admitted that this OSHA mandate is unconstitutional, but he's doing it anyways. And the Constitution is supposed to protect we, the people. It's supposed to protect individual rights and protect us from an overreaching government. And for the last year and a half, I have successfully fought several dozen lawsuits against government for overstepping by depriving people of their constitutional rights. And I'm sick and tired of playing defense when the politicians know that what they're doing they're not allowed to do. And so from that, I've taken my fight for people's constitutional rights from the courthouse, and I want to take it to the Capitol.
Many people will say, or they are saying, well, California is a blue state, and Republicans, they have no chance to win. What is your approach to that?
My answer is actually very simple. If you actually study what's going on in California, California is not a deep blue state. It is actually much more of a purple state. The thing is, too many people are choosing not to vote because they think it is a too blue state. And when you actually start looking at surveys and looking at the data below of the people who live in California, the vast majority of Californians just want government out of their lives. They don't want the government telling them how to run their children's life. They don't want the government saying, your kid must do this, and your kid must do this, and your kid must do that. They want to have personal responsibility over their family and over their children. But the vast majority of Californians, and this is the same across the nation, is the vast majority just want government out of their lives, and they just, if they ignore government, government will ignore them.
Don't you think that when we take the government out of our life, anarchy will start?
No. If you actually understand the history of the United States of America, there have been multiple times where we have rebelled against the tyranny of the government.
Right.
And it is actually, America is unlike any country in the world where we are supposed to be a self-governed people. And if you go clear back to the founding fathers who established United States of America and this American experiment of self-governance. And so what we see is, yes, there are going to be people who take advantage of it. And every time there's a crisis, the people get together and they put it down, put the anarchy down. And, sometimes it takes 20, 30 years to work a full cycle. And if you study American history, there have been many such cycles where you have people pushing for freedom, people pushing for liberty. They want government out of their lives. And then you get that freedom, and then you start getting government control, and there's just this circle that keeps happening. Right now we're in a phase where people understand that there's too much government control over their lives, when the government can say, you're essential, but you're not essential. You can go to work, but you can't go to work. Oh, you can only go to the bar if you take our mandated medical treatment. Oh, you can't go to church, or you can't go to mass, or when the government starts having that kind of control, people start saying, whoa, this is not why I moved to America. America is a melting pot. People have moved to America to live the American experiment of freedom and liberty. If they wanted government telling them what to do,
they could stay their home.
They would stay in from wherever they immigrated from.
Yes. Let me summarize it. Ուրեմն ամենակարևոր հարցումը, որ ես հարցուցի բարոն Մարկին, այն էր, որ ինքը շատ հաջողակ փաստաբան մնե եւ ինչու կուզե որ իր կյանքից կանք այսպես ասած թողնի եւ գնա պոլիտիկի մեջ քաղաքականության մեջ որովհետեւ հավատացեք որ քաղաքականություն որքան էլ անուն եւ կամ թիրք գդրամատրե բայց մնացած իսկապես դժվար կյանք մնե կամ կորց մնե որ կցերնարգե ինքը մանավանդ հիմա հարաճիկային ընտրություններուն ինքը գուզե մասնակցի կամ պիտի մասնակցի Կալիֆոռնիա ներկայացնող սենատորներուն ինչպես գիտեք ամեն մեկ նահանգ գներգացնի երկու սենատորներ, որոնք կերտան եւ բանի մեջ, կապիտոլի մեջ, այսինքն մեր կոնգրեսի մեջ կներկայացնեն 100 այդ սենատորներեն Կալիֆոռնիան ներկայացնողը մեկը, քանի որ հիմա այդ աթորը արդեն դատարկ է եւ այդ աթորի դեղը, որովհետեւ փոխնախագահուի գնաց նախկին սենատորը այդ իսկ պատճառով է, որ պիտի ընտրությունները ըլլան։ Իսկ իմ հարցումը սիրեն այն էր, թե ինչու գուզես այսպես կյանքը դրսևորել, ասա որովհետև շատ հաճախ կտեսնենք, մանավանդ հիմա, որ բեդությունը գկարավարե մարդու կյանքը եւ մարդիկ այլևս չեն ուզեր բեդությունը իրենց կյանքը որոշումներ կատարե։ So I tried to summarize it. I tried. I hope it was fine.
I'm sure the listeners will to let you know if you didn't do a good enough job.
Thank you. That's my wife. She's going to say you didn't translate good. So let's. I don't want to open a can of worm actually, but now these days it is really essential because. I understand it's not a local issue, it's not a national issue, it's a world issue. And we all know the COVID-19 issue that at least we have almost going to be a year now, that we are going through hell internationally. I don't know if you traveled in this.
I have.
Yeah. So it's really very unpleasant, and I see, of course, in the social media all this not pleasant video clips where people are getting mad, getting really upset, and so on. What is your take for all this COVID thing?
Okay. I'm not going to talk about world issues of how the world handles COVID. What I want to talk about is how the United States has handled public health and how we have deviated from that path and how we've handled COVID this time. Mm-hmm. And I think that is relevant for running for U.S. Senate because this is a national issue, how we handle public health. For hundreds of years in the United States of America, we have a term called due process. Mm-hmm. It's a constitutional right given to us through the Constitution that basically says government cannot deprive you of your freedoms and liberties without due process of law. Mm-hmm. That is a fundamental bedrock principle of why you live in America, mm-hmm. where a government official does not have the ability to just come in and deprive you of your life, your liberty, your pursuit of happiness because they say so. Mm-hmm. Understanding that foundation, the way how public health has worked in this country for hundreds of years has been public health can only treat people who are in fact sick or who they have a reasonable degree of certainty is likely contagious. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you an example of how that played out. Back in, I think it was 1908, 09, over 100 years ago, they found 9 people in San Francisco who had bubonic plague. Mm-hmm. Now, they all happened to be in Chinatown. And what this public health said is, we're going to quarantine everybody who lives in Chinatown. Mm-hmm. Because bubonic plague, that's killed a lot of people over a lot of years. This is a very serious disease. Right. But we're going to just shut down all of Chinatown. Everybody who lives in this area of Chinatown, you can't go anywhere. You're stuck at your home. And federal judges came in and said, you can't do that. Due process of law says you have to let everybody live their life. You have to allow them to make an income. You have to allow them to go to work, go to school. You can only quarantine people who are sick or have been in contact with somebody in a manner that you know most likely they are sick. So that has been the standard of how we went through the bubonic plague, how we went through the Spanish flu, how we went through the Hong Kong flu. Every time that there has been a major epidemic, how we dealt with HIV virus, how we dealt with the anthrax scare. The government, public health, could only come in and do something when they said, you have been around somebody who has been tested to be positive, and until we can confirm that you're healthy or not healthy, we're going to put you aside. What we did with COVID, and what's interesting is, if you go look at the manuals for public health officials, this is all in there. This is what they say they do. They understand that this is their constitutional limits and everything like that. When we got to COVID, they just threw the book away. And they basically said, everybody's presumed to be sick. And unless you're on our special list of individuals, you can't go to work. You have to stay home. And certain industries weren't on that list, and they gave money to the governor's re-election campaign, and all of a sudden they were moved from the unessential list to the essential list.
Yeah.
And that's not what it's like in America, where if the privileged few are able to live their lives, whereas if you aren't a part of a group that has money that they're giving, you're a second-class citizen. And so we have seen this over the course of the last year, where the governor says that restaurant around the corner can't serve people on their patio, but across the street there's a movie studio, and everybody over there is allowed to eat. And literally, you're talking 20 feet distance, but these people can eat outside, but these people can't.
Was that done locally or statewide?
This is stuff that happened locally. It's stuff that happened statewide. I'm talking generally about the principle of what happened.
Right.
Due process of law was thrown out. Because what they did is they said, everybody is presumed to be sick. And we saw where all of a sudden unelected public health officials, their word now became law. One of the bedrock principles of why we declared independence from Great Britain was no taxation without representation.
Right.
We're supposed to be we are a republic. We're not a democracy, we're actually a republic.
Yes.
And as a republic, we elect the people who pass the laws by which we are governed by.
Right.
When an unelected public official says, this is what the law is, and they have no accountability to we the people, it is contrary to a Republican form of government, which our Constitution guarantees to us. And so what we have seen is that everything that public health has been based on, 200 years.
Right.
It's just been thrown out the window, and we've come up with a completely different system. Is it a system out of communist China? Is it a system out of? I can't even quite figure out where they came up with this complete plan, because they literally threw away the playbook.
When you say they, meaning the legislation or the executive or the judiciary, what branch of government are we talking about?
We're not talking about the legislatures, because they stayed home.
Okay.
It was the governor's office.
Okay.
It was these unelected public health officials who basically said, this is the law and your business is shut down, and if you don't obey, I'm sending the police to come and arrest you. And that's happened here
in Burbank.
In the Burbank area, there's a couple restaurants.
Right. We actually, a few months ago, we asked them to come in and to present their case. Yeah. So let me summarize.
Go for it.
Yeah. So հարցումս հետևյալն էր, Մարկին, որ ինչ կգործես մանավանդ երբ որ խոսեցան COVID-ի մասին, համաշխարհային այս իրավիճակը ինքը ասավ ես համաշխարհային ուրիշ երկիրներու հետ կորձ ունեմ, ես կորձս ամերիկյան կառավարության հետ է եւ ամերիկյան կառավարությունը ստեղծված է առաջին օրվան է Մեծ Բրիտանիայեն հերանալու այդ սկզբունքը այն էր, որ այս երկիրը ինքը շատ կարևոր հիմքեր ունի մարդու ազատության համար եւ մարդու ազատությունը պետք է հարգվի եւ չես կրնար որևէ մեկը կալևսել որ օրենքը այստեղ գսե դու այլևս իրավունք չունես գլենդել ապրելու պետք է գնաս եւ ասենք Բերբենք ապրիս կամ ասենք Լոս Անջելես կամ Հոլիվուդ ապրիս այդպիսի իրավունքներ չկա դրված պետության կողմից բայց ասում եմ դժբախտաբար այս երևույթը այդպես էր որ pedagogan եւ նույնիսկ ոչ ընտրյալ մարդիկ դոկտոր Ֆաուչիի պես որ բուկայև գսեք որ քեզի այսպես պետք է լայ որովհետեւ ես այսպես կուզեմ լա որովհետեւ ես ուսումնասիրել եմ որ այս ցևը ճիշտ է եւ այլն so մարդկային իրավունքներու ոտնահարում գա նաեւ այս ներկա իրավիճակի մեջ այդպես կսե մեր այսօրվա հյուրը Մարկ Մոյզերը so I'm trying so yes
if you want to take it in smaller chunks, I don't have to talk as long.
No. That's just good. I'm just trying to from topic to another. So well now primary is coming. It's believe it or not, it's going to be June 7, and it's for me it's around the corner.
It'll be here before you know it.
Yes. So. It's going to be tough because there are many candidates there, right? And it's going to be a general election. It's not going to be any kind of. It's going to be like non-partisan primary election, right?
There's going to be right now. There's 24 people who have put their name in their hat for this particular race.
Right.
In the primary election, California has what's called the top two.
Right.
So what's going to happen is people can vote for any of the candidates that they want, and the two with the most amount of votes will move on to the ballot in November 8th. Yes. So about a year from now, when you vote in the November election, there will only be two candidates on the ballot. But the primary, there's going to be a lot of names on the ballot.
Right. And usually, this is what I saw all these years that I've been in the United States, and believe it or not, 35 years ago when I came to the United States, I barely spoke English.
You speak it very well now.
And, you know, and believe it or not, we were only, my wife and I, we came here to visit their families for 15 days. And this is where, and matter of fact, in Pasadena, we saw the hillside, and also came to Glendale and we saw the hillside. It reminds us of the home and we've decided to start our new home here. And this is my children's home and my home. And that's why I want to see not only my children, but my grandchildren to live in a country where freedom and also personal choices are not governed by the government.
And that's one of the reasons why we live in America. It is different from the rest of the world. This American experiment has been an experiment of what, people able to govern themselves, able to make choices. The government is there to tell you, hey, COVID is bad. If you are elderly, you may not want to go to certain places. You may not want to go to church.
Right.
You may not want to go to a grocery store.
Right.
But you don't say, little Johnny, 6 years old, who has a 0.0000001 chance of dying of COVID, you don't say, Johnny, you have to stay home from school because your great-great-grandmother might die of COVID. There's a big disconnect here. The government should be allowed to make reasonable, they have the ability to educate us, but they don't have the right in America to dictate to us. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running for U.S. Senate, is because I actually study and I understand the Constitution. I understand the principles behind the Constitution, and I understand what it means to have a Republican form of government. I understand what it means that we're supposed to ensure that each and every one of us has the ability to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Երբ որ շատ հաճախ պարոն Մարկը կշեշտե Republic կամ Republican, ադի կապ չունի Republic Party-ին հետ։ Republic դա հանրապետությունն է եւ դա ցևովը Երգիրը կառավարելու ցևն է, որ մենք ասենք հանրապետություն, ոչ թե հանրապետական գուսակցություն, այլ հանրապետություն։ Իհարկե Republican Party-ալ կա, որ հանրապետական գուսակցություն է, այդ կապ չունի։ Այստեղ մենք ազատ անկախ երկրի մեջ կապրինք, որտեղ մարդու ազատությունը, ուրախությունը եւ pursuit of happiness, այսինքն իր ցկտումը թեպի ուրախության, ասենք ամենակարևոր հատկանշական կետերն են, որ կան։ Okay, now my $1 million question.
$1 million question. Okay. You know what? I got $1 million answer for your $1 million question.
I believe that. So elected November 8th evening, we come to your staff and we celebrate, we drink the champagne or whatever you like to celebrate with, and you're in Capitol. What is the first thing you like to do to change in California?
Well, I would be going to the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
And what I do there actually is going to affect everybody in the United States. I represent the state of California.
Right.
For the United States of America.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily what am I going to do for Californians, it's what am I going to do
for the nation.
For the nation.
Right.
But it's the people of California that are putting me there.
Right.
And I just want to make sure.
But before that, in Armenian, I explained that 50 states, they have two senators representing their state and governing the whole. The whole nation. Yeah. So
what is it that we need to do? What is the most important thing that we need to do? And I think if you look at what's happened over the last 2 years with COVID and COVID regulations, and whether it's from the federal government, state government, or city government. Now, I can only affect things on the federal government, but I think you can start a trend there that moves down.
Right.
If a federal regulation comes down, you all of a sudden have to obey it as if it's a law. Mm-hmm. But it's not voted on by Congress. Mm-hmm. It's not voted on, we the people can't do anything about it. And what we need to do is we need to put Congress more in control over these regulatory bodies that we have, so that regulations that come down must first be passed by Congress.
Like, for example, Mr. President, he signed executive order that every federal employees have to be vaccinated. Is this, now as an attorney, is this something legal or illegal?
I think it's very unconstitutional.
Unconstitutional.
I think it's unconstitutional.
Okay. And why?
Because it goes back to the principles of liberty and self-governance.
Okay.
Because if the government can say, you have to take this medication in order to work, then they are able to go to a 22-year-old young lady and say, you must abort your baby if you want to work for us. They can go to the 65-year-old individual and say, if you want to keep your job, you must lose 30 pounds. They are going to have dictatorial power over your life if this is found to be constitutional. Again, the government could say, we think that vaccines are proper. For me, the question is not, I'm not pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine. I'm pro-freedom. I'm pro you having a choice in what to do. It's the right of consciousness is kind of what our founding fathers called it. You don't have to say, I don't want this for religious reasons. I don't want this for medical reasons. You can be intellectually, you know what, I've read, and what I've read causes me to have concerns. Well, if the government has a different opinion, they need to do a better job of educating us as to what it is. And education is not beat the hell out of you and you carrot and stick. You know, we live in America where there's a First Amendment right to have a contrary opinion. And so what needs to happen, and the executive order is probably not the best example. The better example is the OSHA mandate that recently came down.
Right.
That came from a regulation, and they say, hey, 30 days from now, every employer is supposed to ask their employees about confidential medical condition. Your employer is not your doctor. They should not have to, you know, what are they going to do? Now they're going to start asking you, what's your HIV status? What are they going to start doing? What's your pregnancy status? Every week you have to come in and tell your employer what your pregnancy status is. How far does this go down? So under my concept, and I think it's one of the most important things, you asked me the $1 million question, what the most important thing is that we have to say, okay, OSHA, you put that mandate out. You say it's an emergency. Well, within 10 days of today, Congress has to vote that up or down. And you know what? At any time in the next couple of years, if Congress all of a sudden decides that this regulation isn't working, all they have to do is have a simple vote and it's done. You know, so the thing is, we got to start reining in these regulatory who are just their laws, their rules are becoming law of the land. The second thing that we need to do, and I can be much quicker with this, we need to return more power to the school districts where parents can hold their school boards accountable to we the people. And I mean, that is so important. There are so many parents frustrated across the nation that their school boards' hands are tied and the school boards are not fighting for their kids because they feel like if we do, they lose their funding. We need to cut Washington, D.C.'s ties to the school districts. Yes, you can give the money, but you can't control everything that they do because we need to have our school districts fighting for our kids.
Thank you. Ուրեմն հարցը հետևյալն էր, որ դվի ես Մարկին ասելով համար, որ ինչն է կարևորը, ամենալավ կարևոր հարցում, որ $1 million հարցում որ գսեն, այն էր, թե ինչ պիտի ընեք, երբ որ դուք կերտակ այնտեղ։ So ամենակարևորը, որ երբ որ դուք կերտակ այնտեղ, միշտ պիտի լա օրենքներու գիրառումը։ Օրենքները եթե գիրառվին, ճիշտ ցևով, օրինակի համար, եթե օշան կա եւ ասե, որ հարաճիկա այս բաներուն, պետք է որ մենք կարողանանք ինչ որտեղ օրենքները մեջտեղ կան, որովհետեւ օշան պիտի ասե, որ մենք ճիշտ կգտնենք, որ այս թեղերը առնենք եւ այլն։ Ուրեմն ցևով պետությունը կգարավարե քո կյանքը։ Ասածը Մարկին այն է, որ ոչ, եթե այդպիսի օրենք մկա, պետք է անպայման կոնգրեսը, ըլլա House of Representatives, ըլլա սենատորները, կովկովիկան եւ ընդրեն, այսինքն քվեարկեն որոշումին թեմ եւ ասեն, որ այսիկա գրնա ըլլալ կամ չէ։ Եվ երկրորդ, ամենակարևորը, school district-ը որ կա դպրոցներուն մեջ, պետությունը Բանեն օրինակի համար չէ, Վաշինգտոնեն գսեմ, մենք դրամը կտանք, որ ուրեմն մենք պիտի որոշենք, որ քո երեխան ասենք գլենդերի մեջ ինչ պետք է ընե դպրոցին մեջ։ Այս մեկը պետք է գենա եւ պետք է որ ծնողները որոշում կատարեն իրենց երեխայի համար։ Wow, that was very, very harsh. Now they think now I'm running also, but no, I'm not running, believe it or not. But please, Mark, promise us that you're coming back again, because June 7, 2022 is around the corner, and we'd like to enlighten our people to see what is it that we have to look into it, and not just blindly go vote or not vote and not participate in this wonderful, because believe it or not, Mark, when the first time after I received my citizenship and I kept that portion of the ballot that they give you so you can keep it, and I was very touched to say that I am part of this great and blessed country, and I can decide with other million people what and how our government should be.
That is one of the beautiful things about living in America.
Yes.
And unfortunately, too many people ignore that civic duty. Because when we forget and don't participate, unfortunately, the government doesn't forget about us, and they don't feel like they're accountable to we the people. And that is what is critical, is that if we want a government that protects our life, our liberty, our pursuit of happiness, then they have to fear we the people, that we will vote them out of office. And unfortunately, we've gone through a stretch of many years where many politicians feel like they're not accountable to the people. And so they do whatever they want. And that's not in people's best interest. And that's why it is so critical that each and every one of us educate ourselves and we participate in this American experience where we get to vote for those people. And if those people are not representing us, we don't have to send them back to representing us again.
So let me summarize all this. So ուրեմն ամենակարևորը սիրելի հերոսայտող բարեկամներ այն էր, որ երբ որ դուք ցևով ցեզի հասած իրավունքը որպես երկրի քաղաքացի մի անդեսեք, որովհետև դուք իրավունք ունիք ընտրելու եւ ասելու թե ով ցեզ պիտի ներկայացնի Վաշինգտոնի մեջ, ով պիտի ներկայացնի այստեղ եւ ցեր քաղաքի մեջ եւ Կալիֆոռնիայի մեջ, Սակրամենտոյի մեջ եւ այլն։ So շատ կարևոր է որ այս ցեզի հասանելիք որպես քաղաքացի ընտրությունները կատարեք։ Սիրելիներ, so let's conclude this with one promise that you're coming back.
I will be back.
All right.
Thank you.
I like that. Եվ ես խնդրեցի Մարկեն, որ անպայման կա եւ նաեւ հարաճիկա ընտրություններուն մասնակցել են առաջ, նաեւ տարբեր նյութերում մաս խոսենք եւ պիտի մյուս անգամ անպայման բան հերասան պիտի առնեմ, որ դուք կարող եք ձեր հարցերը տալ, որ ասեք թե եթե մենք քեզ ընտրեցինք որպես Կալիֆոռնիա սենատոր եւ ձեզ ղրգեցինք Վաշինգտոն, ինչ պիտի անեք մեզ համար։ Սիրելի բարեկամներ, այսպիսով կավարտեմ այսօրվա ելույթը, կցանկանամ ձեզ բոլորիդ բարի աշխատանք, բարի կյանք եւ մեր մայր հայրենիքին պայծառ երկինք եւ լավ ճանապարհ։ Ցտեսություն։